Reflections with Marilyn Baker. Brought to you by Torch Trust, the Christian organisation with a vision for people with sight loss.
Hello and welcome to Reflections from Torch Trust, the show that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm Marilyn Baker and it's wonderful to have your company. With an Olympic Games just on the horizon, we're looking at the legacy of the Christian Missionary Eric Liddell, the famous Scottish athlete and devout Christian who competed in the 1924 Olympics. Joining us now to chat about Eric Liddell is John MacMillan, the CEO of the Eric Liddell Community in Edinburgh, a care charity and community hub founded in 1980 in memory of the inspirational Olympic gold medalist. He's talking to Reflections' new producer, Chris Byland.
For anyone that doesn't know the name Eric Liddell, just give us a little bit of an insight into who Eric was and what he achieved.
Well, 100 years ago this year, Chris, Eric Liddell became famous because he won a gold medal in the 400 metres final at the Paris Olympics in 1924. He caused quite a stir in the UK because he was one of the favourites to win the 100 metres Olympic final. And yes, because of his Christian beliefs and his absolute commitment to his principles, he decided, because the heats were on a Sunday, that wasn't going to be feasible for him to take part. So that did cause a commotion in the UK at that time, and certainly in the sporting world. And I do think, after speaking to members of the Liddell family, that we can be clear that he was put under significant pressure from a variety of sources, but he stood firm to his beliefs. He didn't participate in the 100 metres, and as a result of, probably lost out on certainly an Olympic medal and possibly further Olympic medals, because there was a whole range of other events that he might have participated in as well. But he did win a bronze medal in the 200 and he did switch to the 400. But beyond that, he was just about to graduate, I think, the week after his Olympic success. He studied pure science at the University of Edinburgh and had become known as an elite sports person in both the track and field or athletics, but he'd also represented Scotland in rugby. He had 7 caps for Scotland, but eventually he couldn't do both and had to focus on his athletics. That was his choice. So that's a wee bit of the background to him to get us up and running, Chris.
He was a fascinating man, wasn't he, Eric Liddell? Because he was born, he wasn't born in Edinburgh, was he, if I remember rightly? I think he was born in China.
He was born in Tianjin in China, and he lived for most of his life in China and spent a lot of time in Tianjin. And the week after his Olympic success, he graduated from Edinburgh University, and his next big move after that was back to Tianjin initially as a science teacher within one of the missionary schools, and reconnected in China in that way. And of course, the majority of his family were still in China because his parents were missionaries and had spent the vast majority of their life in China, in Tianjin. So in some ways, he was going back to his family and his international home, if you like.
I mean, Eric Liddell's legacy, it lives on in many, many ways. There's dedications to him across the globe. And of course, the film Chariots of Fire and the Eric Liddell Community that was founded back in 1980. And the man in charge of it, of course, is you. What is the aim of the community?
The Eric Liddell Community, we're a care and dementia specialist charity, Chris. We respond to an endeavour to serve vulnerable people in the city of Edinburgh, and we generally have a focus on health and well-being. Also, a couple of our big priorities, and in some ways it's not focused on this, but it's a bit of a lingering response to what we all went through linked to the recent lockdowns, but we have a focus on loneliness and isolation. So our charity and our charitable functions, that's the key focus. It's about caring for others, supporting vulnerable people, and doing everything we can to make their life as good as it possibly can be.
That's really important things to be doing. I've worked in loneliness areas before, and just tell me a little bit about the areas that your communities are based in, because it's not just one place, is it? It's based across a few different places across Edinburgh.
Yeah, we have our headquarters in Morningside, and if any of your listeners know Edinburgh, the place that we're at is affectionately known as Holy Corner, Chris. Our building is a former church, and there's three other churches on the opposite corners of we're at a big crossroads. But we are an Edinburgh-based charity, and when the charity was set up in the 1980s, it was very much a local community charity in the area that's closest to us in Morningside and Bruntsfield. But probably over the last 15 years or so, we've now grown and developed, and we are providing support to vulnerable people across the city of Edinburgh. So that's our sort of catchment area. We don't have any plans for major growth or world domination at this time. And I think, joking aside, there's more than enough really important work for us and other really good charities in Edinburgh to be getting on with without trying to stretch ourselves too far. So things have changed in the 40 odd years since we were set up. The building was a former Church of Scotland building. It was known as North Morningside Church, and the congregation was dwindling in the late 70s, and probably what was left of the congregation, working with the three other churches at Holy Corner, they worked together to ensure the future of this beautiful building, and the care charity was formed. And right across the road from us, one of the churches was Eric Liddell's church, a church called Morningside United Church, which was part of the United Reform community. And that church is still active now. And there's a joint approach between them, United Reform Church and the Church of Scotland. They work together, providing support to the local community. And Eric was known for practicing his faith and delivering Bible classes in Morningside United. So there's a very close proximity to Eric and his past here.
Wow, that sounds really, really impressive. And we talk about the people that are going to be served by your community. What are you doing to help people and their families with their day-to-day lives? You mentioned you were working with people who might be suffering with dementia or early onset dementia. How are you
Yes.
helping these communities exactly?
Well, at the Eric Liddell Community, one of our main kind of service areas, we provide a very specialist dementia daycare service that is for about 14, 15 people a day, 70 people a week, and over any year, we provide support to 3,500 people who have got a diagnosis of dementia. So what do we do in dementia daycare? Well, our charity generally has a very positive kind of approach to supporting people. And yes, a diagnosis of dementia is not the best news, Chris, that any family will receive. And indeed, it will only progress and gradually get worse. But what we do is certainly we encourage people to enjoy their life, to live life to the full. We support and encourage social connections, which has a direct link to responding to loneliness and isolation. We encourage and facilitate people who are living with dementia to continue to learn. So we offer a vibrant programme of activities and indeed educational opportunities for a lot of our clients. And give you an example, some of our dementia daycare clients have recently enjoyed their conversational German classes. We had a client who was 103 and she downloaded her first app on one of our iPads in daycare. We use the arts. So we've got an amazing community musician who works with all of our communities, but certainly spends a lot of time working with our dementia clients in terms of enjoying music, playing and singing, and indeed writing and creating musical pieces, which keeps the mind active. And certainly there's a whole range of research, Chris, that would suggest if people can keep their mind active and keep their body active, it won't stop the progression of dementia, but it might slow it up ever so slightly, and hopefully at the same time allow them to enjoy their life as much as they can. We've also had Dame Darcy Bussell visit here, and she did a documentary a couple of years ago into the positive impact of dance and movement into mental health and dementia. And she was keen to come and visit us. So that went out on the BBC network across the UK. And we've continued to use dance and movement as a way to engage with those who are living with dementia. We also work closely with a charity called the Playlist for Life, Chris, who was set up by the author and broadcaster Sally Magnuson. And Sally wrote a book about her family's experience of their mother's dementia, and she was a very good amateur singer. And on the back of that, Sally did a lot of research with university colleagues, and that found that music does make a difference, and there is a power to music and a power to connect and reconnect part of the brain. So we now work with the Playlist for Life, and we're a help point for the Playlist for Life, and we use musical memories, Chris, to spark off and bring back positive memories for our clients. So we take a very person-centred and group work approach to everything that we do. Beyond our dementia work, we also support carers, and as you'll know, caring for somebody else can actually take over, if not destroy, the life that you previously had. So we're there to try and provide some support to carers, some respite to carers, and the major challenges that we have. And we also, beyond our dementia daycare service, we also provide a whole range of more open and inclusive dementia-focused activities on an open and drop-in policy as well.
We're talking a lot about the Eric Liddell community and some of the amazing work that you're doing. Eric Liddell, of course, was a Christian, and he was a missionary for much of his life beyond the Olympics and his sporting triumphs, which included rugby, of course. Does that Christian ethos and outlook run through the Eric Liddell community as well?
Yes, it does in a variety of ways, Chris, because when the charity was set up, so basically it was set up by the local community, but mainly with the support of 4 local churches. So it probably wouldn't be a surprise to find out that when the charity was established, there was Christian values embedded into our constitution and our memo and articles for the charity. We have continued to work in the general sense to good Christian values. However, what I would say is that before I arrived here, about 10 years or so ago, our board, while they had absolutely nothing against Christian values, or indeed Eric Liddell's Christian values, they decided to remove those from the constitution. Not that they were against Christian values, but because they really wanted to welcome all religions and or no religions. And in some ways, I think they were mindful of the possibility that one person's religion might stop somebody from coming in here. I would say that has not stopped us from being a caring organisation that looks after the needs of a variety, of a wide and diverse group of individuals. So we may no longer carry those Christian values specifically, but we certainly operate in a way that would be very welcoming to all religions, and that's what we aspire to do. So, and certainly as a charity named after Eric Liddell, we're very mindful of his Christian beliefs and his history, and we'd want to do nothing that would affect or undermine his reputation and his values. And we do that because it's the right thing to do, but also because we remain very close contact with the Liddell family, his 2 remaining daughters of 3, and actually wider members of the Liddell family. So not that they have a governance role within our charity, but we generally liaise with them, keep them up to date, and seek their ongoing support for everything that we do. And Patricia Liddell Russell, Eric's eldest daughter, who is now a sprightly 88-year-old, but fit as a fiddle and doing very well, she has said to us, Chris, that if her dad was still with us, He would be very supportive and delighted with the work that we're doing and how we're doing it.
I
And
bet
she
he would
felt,
be.
yeah, she feels that what we're doing is still a strong, provides a strong link to his values and his principles and his beliefs.
It does sound like that. And we talk about the Christian values, and you say you've removed them from various documents and whatnot. But actually, the Christian viewpoint, of course, is that we should look after each other, and that's embedded into Christian values entirely. So I think what you're doing is amazing. I mean, we've already mentioned that 2024 marks 100 years since Eric Liddell took part in the Olympics, which is also taking place in Paris when he competed in 1924. So there's a nice similarity there. But
Yeah.
tell us what you have happening to tie in with this historic milestone.
Well, it's been quite an exciting, fun, but very busy and challenging couple of years in the lead up to this. I mean, going back to the beginning of things a good few years ago, Chris, we felt that if a charity named after Eric Liddell couldn't do something to celebrate his legacy on an ongoing basis, but also the key milestone of the centenary of his amazing Olympic victory, who could or who should?
Hmm.
So, unlike other charities, we have never really, up until the preparation for the centenary and his legacy, the project that we are calling the Eric Liddell 100, we have never really looked to maximise on the use of Eric's name in our title. And when you look at some of the amazing charities who have done that, we thought, well, maybe we should follow their lead. So, the patron of the Eric Liddell 100 is Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal. And as a former Olympian herself, we're delighted to have her support. What the Eric Liddell 100 is all about, it's basically we want to simplistically celebrate, secure, and develop the legacy of Eric Liddell. And yes, isn't it? It's 100 years on from his Olympic success is a great milestone in itself, and what a way to start a legacy initiative. So we've used the excuse, and I don't mean it like that, the excuse of his centenary year to launch this legacy initiative that is about celebrating his Olympic success. It is about celebrating who he was and what he stood for, be that on the sports field, in education, or indeed in the service of others and building on his Christian beliefs. So we worked with a whole range of partners from the sporting and educational side. So we've worked with Edinburgh University, Scottish Rugby, Team GB, UK Athletics, Scottish Athletics, schools and universities. And with them, we developed values for the Eric Liddell 100, Chris, that importantly we felt that Eric would sign up to. They aren't necessarily Christian values, but there's certainly strong links to Christianity and these values. And they are values of passion, compassion, and integrity. And when you think of what's happening just now around the world, Chris, my goodness, if ever there was a time for compassion and integrity, my goodness, it'd be now. I mean, what would Eric Liddell think of the world just now? I think he'd be delighted, in awe, and probably disappointed at the same time, because he lived in a time of two world wars, and here we are. We have warring throughout the globe. And yeah, there's a lot that we could have and should have learned in the preceding 100 years. But hopefully, what we're trying to do is provide a little bit of light to some of these issues and use Eric's story and his life and how he lived his life as a message for all generations, and particularly young people. We've developed an educational resource for hard-pressed teachers in schools, so they don't need to do the research that we've done over the last 18 months into Eric. And we've developed a whole range of teaching plans, excellent teaching plans for primary and secondary age pupils, and great for teachers. And the thinking is, if we can embed some teaching into the schools in the UK and wider, that will embed Eric's stories with younger generations. And hopefully by doing that, that will secure his memory and his legacy, and he won't become a stranger to younger generations as life goes on.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you're doing some fantastic things there in Edinburgh. John, thank you so much for spending some time with us here at Reflections. If anyone wants to find out more about the work of the Eric Liddell Community in Edinburgh, or of course the 100 that you're running, where can they get more information?
Well, probably the best thing, Chris, would be to look at our website, which is fairly straightforward. It's ericliddell.org. So people would be able to pick up there. But what I would say, the Eric Liddell 100 is not a Scottish thing.
No.
It's probably based in Scotland. It started in Scotland, but absolutely something for the whole of the United Kingdom and wider. And we're working hard with international partners to make sure that we spread the Eric Liddell story throughout the world.
Thank you again to John MacMillan for sharing the story of Eric Liddell and talking to us about the care work he and his team are doing in memory of the legendary Olympian in Edinburgh. It's time now for this week's thought, which is all about looking forward. It's written by John Lake and is read for us by Grace Dawson and David Shepherd.
On the table by my phone is a spiral-bound notepad. Each page gets divided down the middle, with phone calls to make on the left, jobs or visits on the right. I must have been advised in my early years that if you place your pen at the starting point, then fix your eye on the finishing point, and then quickly draw the line, usually it is straighter than looking at the pen pointer all the time. In other words, don't look at where you are at the moment, but rather look at the destination. I have only won one running race in my life. I must have been about 8 years old and competing in the siblings race at my brother's school sports day. I remember my mother saying, "Don't go looking back at the others, keep running forward, look at the rope at the end." Life is rather like that, isn't it? In Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1, we are told to run the race marked out for us, no one else's race, having first thrown off anything that hinders or holds us back, also dealing with any sin that entangles or trips us up. Instead, we are told to fix our eyes, our attention on Jesus, who is at the finishing line to welcome us home. Maybe we should be looking rather more towards heaven, not being morbid, but with a keen sense of anticipation. 2 verses that help me in the race, in the journey through life, are found in Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight.
What more could we ask for? So, whether we are 8 or 80, we are in a race. We may not be running so quickly these days, but as Philippians chapter 3, verse 14 says,
We press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called us heavenward in Christ Jesus.
Thank you to David and Grace for reading this week's thought, which had a lovely link to running a race, something of a theme for this week on Reflections. That's just about all we have time for this week, but before we go, let me tell you about an opportunity to join us for the Torch Together Scarborough holiday in September. You'd be staying at Cober Hill, a Victorian mansion steeped in history and set in 11 acres of stunning grounds nestled in the North York Moors National Park and Heritage Coast. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? There's still places available, and for more details about this holiday and other activities run by Torch Trust, you can give us a call on 01858 438 260, 01858 438 260, or visit the website torchtrust.org, or by emailing us on info@torchtrust.org. Until next week, from me, Marilyn Baker, God bless.
Reflections from Torch Trust.